Welcome to the Mini Break, your daily podcast for the biggest storylines, results, and controversies from the tennis world. Today is Wednesday, June 26th. The 2024 Wimbledon Championships are less than a week away. Of course, we know it's our job here at Cracked Racquets to help prepare all of you tennis fans for the year's third major. That's why this week on this show, we're previewing Wimbledon from every possible angle. We've already talked about the top men's contenders heading into the singles competition. We've broken down those players closest to capturing a first major title in their careers and how their chances look at earning that maiden slam at this Wimbledon. Now we're going to get into the top contenders on the women's singles side of things. And I could think of no better guest to help me do precisely that than the man joining us on the show here tonight. Before I bring him in, I will mention we are live here on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. Great to be here. And if any of you listeners tuning in have any thoughts, comments, questions throughout the show, feel free to send them our way. Of course, the man who loves answering all the questions that are thrown his way is a returning champion to our show, and he's joining me here tonight. Of course, you have seen his work appear in so many different publications, the New York Times, Slate, Racquet Magazine, of course, nowadays the Second Serve, which I do want to ask him a little bit about here tonight. Okay. Of course, you can also listen to him over on the No Challenges Remaining podcast, a podcast that, dare I say, might just be picking up in volume moving forward. Of course, he is also now an esteemed author of Naomi Osaka, her journey to finding her power and her voice. Now, it won't be a radio style interview tonight because we're live here on YouTube. Ben Rothenberg joins me once again, my podcasting big brother. Ben, it is always good to see your smiling face. Welcome back to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Likewise, doing well. I'm happy to answer all the questions, more than you probably. And also I'm just delighted to be invited into your newfangled studio with your little, props behind it. I was calling it your boudoir earlier. You really created a nest here in this space, and I'm excited to see it. I'm so excited to be here. The lava lamp, I mean, that's intense.
Well, I sent you this photo as soon as someone gave it to me at NCAAs, but the real
that's unbelievable.
This is the real big addition, is the Alex
Gruskin
cool bobblehead. Again, I know I was
keep it in frame if there's a way you can possibly
keep it. You want it in the shot? Can we keep him right here on
he
my
can
side?
Be right there. That's better.
Yeah, he'll be at least someone will be agreeing with the things I'm saying throughout the course of tonight, because we know someone on the other side certainly won't. But no, I appreciate you being here, and again, I mentioned that there. You are my podcasting big brother. My real big brother is the only person in life, according to my parents, who can tell me no and I'll listen. I think that does apply to you in the tennis world as well. So I think it's an apt description. But before we get into all things Wimbledon, talk to me. What's up in the life of Ben Rothenberg? Because I have been seeing more of your work appearing in the Second Serve. That's intriguing to me, intriguing to tennis fans. Tell us what's up with that, updates on the book, and so much more.
Yeah, so I was working on the book, so people know that was a pretty all-encompassing thing for pretty much all of 2022 and 2023. And then it came out early this year, so I was doing some promo stuff for a couple months with that as it rolled out, which is fun, different gear to do. And the whole process of doing the book was fun and fulfilling and interesting, and getting to dive deep into one topic and one person. Very multi-layered story Naomi Osaka has, but still to get sort of more focused than just doing a different article every day or every couple of days was a very nice change of pace to sort of build up those muscles rather than just the sort of fast twitch ones that you have to use as a newspaper writer for the most part. So that was a lot of fun. And then, I haven't been back on tour. I mean, I was in Australia for when the book came out. So I did the whole Australian Open there. And then I haven't been back on tour since then. Been doing some more podcasting, as you mentioned, No Challenges Remaining, ramping back up to being a weekly or close to weekly show, hopefully doing a lot during Wimbledon, close to daily, I hope. And then, I'll probably be at some tournaments again once they come stateside. But it's been nice, honestly, being off the treadmill of the tour. Like I had several friends' weddings that I got to go to in the last couple of weeks, which never used to happen. I mean, I missed so many weddings, small thing in my, well, it's not a small or big thing, but I missed a lot of life events basically by spending 5 months on the tour.
Sure.
For roughly per year for the last roughly 12 years. So getting to spend a bit of time off the carousel has been nice. And then looking at the carousel as it spins, as it looks occasionally nauseating in how it spins, and trying to figure out if and when to jump back on as my current sort of look at myself for my own travel schedule. But I'll be in Washington, I think hopefully Cincinnati, maybe New York, we'll see. But keeping it a little bit easier in my old age. Been at this game a long time. I relate everything that's going on with Djokovic, and this is a women's episode. When Djokovic is like 37 and kind of over it this year, I can relate personally.
Well,
I really can.
two pieces of news off of that. One, you have friends. Shout out to you. I didn't know that about you. This is a good thing to learn here to
Yeah.
start today's show. But no, part two, not as breaking. Yeah, you're getting old, my friend. I mean, again, you are a Brady Hoke and Lloyd Carr era Michigan Wolverine. It speaks to what you saw during your time in college. And again, that means something to us, maybe less so to others tuning in. Where does the book being published in Polish rank in the all-time accomplishments? That's top 5, right? I mean, someone
Yeah.
worked your work in another language.
That was cool to see. And it's not a short book, too. So someone did a lot of work
Yeah.
and a lot of consonants in Polish. A lot of consonants got hit into this book. So I haven't seen a copy of it physically yet, the Polish copy. There's like a scan of the first, like, I don't know, 5 pages that I've looked at in Polish and spotted some words. You know, I can see like, oh, that's Pokemon. I can see it's like the intro to the book where Naomi talks about Pokemon. So yeah, so that's been pretty cool. Still a couple other languages. I don't know any other dates for them too, but it's out in the UK now, which it was not uh when it first came out. It came out in the UK in April. Which I don't really understand the timing of that date, honestly, but it came out there in April. And now it's out in the US and Australia already, and Canada. So lots of places people can hopefully get it, including like libraries. A lot of libraries have it or can request it. And Audible too. If you're an Audible premium user, you can get the audiobook for free with your subscription, which is pretty cool. So a
Well,
lot of
yeah.
options.
No,
I'm
again,
less worried about moving copies and just people want to find it. I'm still, oh, you have the old, you have the proof.
it's right
Nice.
here. It's right here in the studio.
Nice.
Again, my friend, we keep it courtside. I appreciate all the work you did, obviously, in telling that story. And obviously, again, to have you back in the tennis world more frequently moving forward, that is something I'm excited for. I know well, maybe not all tennis fans out there, but a lot of tennis fans
Most,
out there.
like
Yeah,
let's say most. I know
more
obviously
than
they're
majority, not plurality, straight up majority. I would say of
yeah.
tennis fans will be excited to have you back. But any other thoughts? You ready to get into tonight's exercise?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to get into
All right,
the thing
let's
you had me do. Tangent wherever you want, but happy to get on topic.
All right, well then let's do it. Let's start our conversation looking at the top contenders heading into the 2024 Wimbledon women's singles competition. Before we start naming names, and we're going to get through a lot of names here on tonight's show, I want to start big picture because obviously this has been a year where it's something we've talked about a lot on this show. I haven't talked about it as much directly with you. Feels like one of the biggest storylines has been consolidation at the top of the game, particularly on the women's side. Sabalenka goes back to back at the Australian Open. Swiatek, a third straight Roland Garros title. Even at the big events, Swiatek obviously winning the treble, Rome, Madrid, Roland Garros, Rybakina's success in Stuttgart and Miami, and obviously Iga wins Indian Wells as well. Yeah, there's been a Paulini moment at a 1000 certainly, but we know who the best players in the world are. We know Coco Gauff's getting quarterfinals or further. It might be a little ugly at times, but for the first time in a long time, it feels like we have a top 4, a definitive hierarchy in the women's game. And this is the stat I mentioned earlier in the week. It's one of my favorite stats as we head into this Wimbledon. In every season since the start of 2015, there has been at least one first-time major singles champion in the women's game every season
Wow.
since 2014. So a decade, again, of first-time champions emerging each year. This is one of my takes going into the year. Should have looked up this stat beforehand. I didn't think we'd have a first-time major champion in 2024. I thought this consolidation might be coming as we head into Wimbledon. Are you leaning more towards the consolidation route? Do you see that pathway? Or, again, if there's a space for a first-time champion to emerge, it's always Wimbledon. I don't think someone's gone back to back there since Serena. I'll go double check that stat in
Yeah,
a moment.
no.
But which pathway are you as you started to tier out your power rankings?
Yeah, no one's gone back to back at Wimbledon or the US Open for a while, I'm pretty sure. I have to think about it. So yeah, I mean, a lot of that's just sort of some flukes of Barty, winning and retiring and whatever else may have happened. I have to go through some of the champions and figure out where exactly they got derailed. But yeah, I think looking at my list is dominated by women who've won slams previously. So that would lead towards this. And Wimbledon, actually, I think it's been actually low-key consistent. I mean, Wimbledon had never, on the women's side, had never had a champion unseeded, which is amazing for modern women's tennis, until Vondrousova. She was the first unseeded Wimbledon champion in the women's side, which is pretty amazing given, the sort of winners like the Ostapenkos, Raducanus, whoever else you get elsewhere. And I'm trying to think of an Australian Open unseeded champion. Not sure there has
Kenin,
been
well, it
one.
wasn't unseated, but it
No,
was
she was
surprising.
like she was in the teens
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that yeah, so that's there, and I think that, and also there was another step that was like a nerdier step that like there hadn't been a Wimbledon final between two first-time Wimbledon finalists for a really long time. It's like every Wimbledon final, if you go back, it always had at least one woman who made a Wimbledon final before. And I'm trying to think if that still is the case. Now I think Rybakina Jabeur finally broke that streak, but that was 2022.
I think
But
Pliskova
before
Barty broke the streak, and then it was a second consecutive year that happened because Jabeur
that
made
that
her
sounds
second
right.
final. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, maybe Pliskova was
Yeah.
Barty, but it had lasted for a long time. And even
Yeah.
like Bartoli Lisicki, well, Bartoli had already made a slam final, like, or a Wimbledon final. Like, there was this like long chain of it, this streak, this improbable streak going for a very long time. So that is to say, Wimbledon. I like Wimbledon a lot. I think Wimbledon women's is actually one of my favorite events of the year. I love watching women on a fast court. You don't really get the sort of serve bot monotony that you can get in some men's tennis, honestly, with your, and except through Isner Anderson or, whatever various Milos Raonic matches, and God knows the whole 90s in the men's side was a lot of that, with Ivanisevic, Sampras, etc. Women's tennis on grass, I think, is this like perfect balance of like attacking being rewarded, but not having it be too staccato. I think it's a really great place. And there's also a lot of women who attack and are aggressive in non-power driven ways. Your Radvanskas, your Stritzova. I just had on NCR to plug that briefly. It was a sort of grass wizard there. On Jabeur, these are players who are aggressive players, but who don't do it just by walloping the ball. And the low bouncing grass rewards that. So I think women's Wimbledon is one of my favorite tournaments of the year to bifurcate it.
I do think, though, of late, things have gotten particularly funky, right? Like Halep 2019. That wasn't a Wimbledon title I
That
saw
was weird.
coming. The Barty 21 one made sense.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Rybakina had Wimbledon winning tennis in her. I didn't think it was going to happen in 2022. That was a little bit out of nowhere. And obviously, there were some circumstances, no Russians, Belarusians in that event still. That was unexpected. Vondrousova last year, obviously unexpected given the surface. Women's Wimbledon event has gotten weird. Doesn't mean it hasn't been fun, but like, Svitolina was a quarterfinalist last year as well.
Semi-finalist. I think the last couple of years, I think you're right. Rybakina, I think, was looked at for pre-pandemic even. She was one really surging 2019 player, or even early 2020 maybe, I'm thinking. Was really picking up steam, really got kind of delayed by the pandemic, but insiders who knew, WT insiders or unofficial WT insiders knew that Rybakina had game, and that it came together for her made sense. Even if she hadn't had much build up to those 2 weeks. And you're right, this is an asteriskable result, honestly, without the Russians and Belarusians there for men and women. I think it's fair to do that in retrospect, even if we were trying to, enjoy it at the time. I think looking back, it is an off tournament in a certain way. Vondrousova, I gotta say, is one of the champions in recent years that's felt most random to me. Like I honestly struggle to, like, I talked this on my podcast at length. Like I struggle to kind of make a narrative around her win and like why it was her time. And I think if you play that tournament 100 more times, I don't think she wins it again. Like I think the 2023 Wimbledon, I think if you run it back over and over, I don't think you come up with a Vondrousova champion again. So I think a lot of things broke her way.
That might be true, but I think when we do look back, it'll be part of the era of, dare I say, the post-Serena, pre-capital letters EGA. Good spelling there. IGA, EGA. I was getting ready to say EGA. It was the in-between era where, like, you had 5 years to kind of rack up what you could. And obviously, I think someone like Simona Halep will look back at those 5 years and say, how did I not come away with 4+ majors coming out of them? But like that was the random era, that was the 5-year in between era where we had a lot of good players, but Barty retiring also extended that era a little bit longer, as well, as she was clearly emerging as the world number one. Here's the thing, just to finish this point before we get into our power rankings. You look at just the numbers from our friends at Tennis Abstract. You said you had a nerdier stat for me. Don't worry, I'm here to beat you, as always, as a good little brother does. You look at the record for opponents players this year, records against non-top 20 opponents. I always like to quote my friend Arthur Ozga, who used to always fire us up before a match by saying, guys, we can't win the tournament this round, but we can absolutely lose it. And it was like, hey, let's get our act together. Same thing applies. You're not going to play a lot of non-top 20 players in a slam final, but you're going to have to beat a bunch of them to get to the slam final. Here are where those top players are. Iga Swiatek, 28-2 against non-top 20 opponents this year. That's number one on the year. Rybakina, 26-3. That's 2 by win percentage. Goff, 28-4. That's 3 by win percentage. Sabalenka 20-5. She's 6th by win percentage, but still over the 80% mark. Now you want to go against top 20 opponents. Fine. You're playing the best of the best. Iga Swiatek, 17-2. Lol. Sabalenka, 10-4. Rybakina, 9-4. Those are your top 3 by win totals against top 20 opponents so far this year. Now, that's a metric where Coco Gauff lacks, but again, she is doing a really good job this year of beating who she's supposed to beat and getting in those positions, even if the 4-6 record against the top 10 so far this year leaves a little bit to be desired. We know who the best players are. Like, they're top 4 in the rankings. They're top 4 in the points race. Iga's already qualified for the tour finals. Like, lol. One of those things that should be that fun, like kind of is that funny already.
Are you going to keep saying lol with this frequency during the show? I got to adjust. I got to adjust to that.
Maybe it's one of my new bits.
Okay. I'm not mad at it. It's just new to me.
It'll be the last time I said it.
I say lol. I hit a little lower. I go lol.
You are from the East Coast. Sometimes it shows.
Yeah. It's a Maryland O.
In an old map of the United States, DC was the South. So let the record show you're Southern in some minds. Yeah, the hair is the giveaway. Anyways, I think we have a clear-cut top 4. And I said it at the start of the season. I stick with it. Yeah, players have had moments. Katerina Alexandrova, if she was who she was against Iga that night, every night of the season, sure, she could be one of the best players in the world. I think players like Katie Bolter and, the Danielle Collinses of the world, they're all playing really good ball. The idea of them going through 2 of those tier 1 players to get to one of these titles, I just don't see it happening at this year's Wimbledon. And so the reason I ask this before the power ranking is we'll get into different names here, but I do think the tiers are pretty important. And I think there's a pretty solid, a healthy gap between tier 1 and tier 2. Is that a fair thing to say before we get into any names?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you established already, the top 4 are pretty clearly numerically, and those top 20 numbers are very impressive by all of them. I mean, as much as Coco, we'll talk about Coco. I'm sure she's on both our top 10 somewhere, or whatever. Our mine's a little bit more than 10. I'm sure yours is too. I'm sure she shoehorned some stuff in here, but yeah, even if it's not always convincing, the numbers are very, very solid, right, from all these women. So
and the eye test.
Yeah. So I think we prefaced this. I think we're ready to get into it.
No, I mean, again, there are injury concerns, and we can get into that as we go. But all right, we'll start getting into our lists here. Obviously, you start at the bottom, work our way to the top. We both had honorable mentions to get into. Let's start with your honorable mentions, Ben Rothenberg, and we'll bring them onto our screen now. Talk us through the list of players who you just left out of your top 10.
Okay, so I'm hoping that the graphics match here. I'm not used to graphics. Let's see. Yes, so these are my players who were great at some point in the recent past, and are still somewhat, would not be shocking if they did something Wimbledon this year. Elena Ostapenko, I'll go bottom up. Elena Ostapenko, obviously, catch lightning in a bottle. We saw what she did to Swiatek at the US Open last year. Grass is not a bad surface for her historically. She made a semifinal on it in 2018, I believe. And when she's feeling good, which she was a lot of this year, she's someone to watch out for. She's someone who Swiatek again would not want to see in her draw. Swiatek's 0-4, 0-5 against Ostapenko. She's a game breaker there, and just someone who in any sort of dark horse list has to be mentioned. Vondrousova, as I said in the intro, I mean, she's defending champion, so to not have her in my top 10 when she's still a top 10 ranked player feels pointed. But I again was not super convinced by her Wimbledon win, which was like a really harsh thing to say. But I just feel like so much stuff broke her way. I thought there was these 2 storylines and these 2 dream fairy tales, which both just ran out of gas. Coincidentally, when Vondrousova was across the net, which was Svitolina in the semifinals and then Jabeur in the final. I think that was more about those 2 players coming up, sort of running empty, coming up short, whatever you want to say, in that match. And then Pliskova just made the final in Nottingham. She's a great grass court player. She's had some peaks during this year. She'll feel comfortable there. I would not be surprised at all with her going like quarters or deeper at Wimbledon, with the right draw. There's no one who would really want to see her if she's in form on grass. So that's my 3 honorable mentions.
2021 Wimbledon finalists. So a couple of things off of these points. All of the players you have are names I have on my 30-player list I came up with when thinking of the contenders. Don't worry, I whittled it down, and I think I only have 12 in my top 10, which for me, come on, that's pretty good.
I have 12 in my top 10 also. I think
it's
so that's
beautiful. Good. Again, great minds think alike. All these players.
I have 14 anyway.
Well, anyways, let's do the Ostapenko now, and then we'll get to my list. Ostapenko played well today in losing a straight set match to Katie Boulter. She went down really big early, but started swinging freely. And keep in mind, the last 2 seasons, Ostapenko has been a top 10 contender going into Wimbledon. Now, obviously, 2022, she finals Eastbourne the week before Wimbledon, makes the round of 16. 2023, she wins Birmingham, quarterfinals Eastbourne, ultimately knocked out round 2 at Wimbledon. But again, 2022 Wimbledon, 2023 Wimbledon, she had success going into each of those events on the grass court. She's 48-22 overall on this surface. Her go for broke game style makes sense. The argument of why she can't be top 10 right now is she has just not played well since the end of February. As good as she was June of last year to February to start this season, it has been a regression back to the Ostapenko mean over the last few months. That would be the argument for leaving her out. I'll get to Vondrousova more in a little bit. Karolina Pliskova, 2021 Wimbledon finalist. She has the thing you want most on this surface, a serve that's going to win you easy points. And look, Karolina Pliskova is never going to win a track meet. Grass tennis can only be so much of a track meet. And if she can get her hands on the ball, things can happen. So much about grass court tennis movement is anticipation. Like, I think we could see her in a second week, even if the ranking right now is outside of the top 32. I don't hate that selection for you. You went with a veteran lean here in your honorable mention, so we'll go to my honorable mention on the veteran side of things because,
so many.
of course, no, don't worry, we're not going to cover them all here. You made the case for Ostapenko. I want to see Paulini play a full match. She's just been too good this year to not mention her name. Kalinskaya looked real good on her way to the final last week. Faster surface, always a good thing for her. Played Bencic really tight on this surface a couple of years ago. That's a match that's stuck in my mind. They played like twice in a summer. Muhova, she got her first win today. Respect the name. Kasatkina, like quietly one of the best movers on this surface we have. Siniakova, really good on this surface. And the 27-year-old Bad Homburg champion last year, quarterfinals this year, career high singles ranking right now. Again, is she going to win it? No. Could she end up in the second week outdoing her ranking, outdoing her seeding? Absolutely. That's why she ends up on a list like this. Alexandrova, Haddad, Maya, Pliskova, all respect picks. And then, surely based on her upside, Ludmila Samsonova. Like, what if she gets hot for 2 weeks, Ben Rothenberg? What if she serves well? We've already seen her win a title on the grass so far this year. I know she lost in 3 sets today, a tight one, not to Vekic, but to the other one in that bottom half of the draw. I apologize. I'm blanking on who that is. I'll go look that up in a second. But this is my list of veterans who have the level, the experience, or something in their resume to be interesting. Is that fair?
Yeah, where some of them will come up on my top 10. So I'm excited
Really?
to dive into that. Yeah,
All right. I like to
yeah,
hear that.
yeah,
Samsonova,
no.
by the way, knocked out 3 sets by the aforementioned Katerina Siniakova. That's who
There
it
you
was.
go.
6-3 and
There
30.
you
That's
go.
not a bad loss. And that's also why
No.
she's lower on the dangerous veterans list. The other one I have is right up your alley. The other list of honorable mentions. It's purely
Double
young
honorable
player.
mention list. First of all,
Well,
love that.
well, because it's young players who might pop, right? And to anyone who, by the way, is accusing me of not making decisions right now, I did make decisions. These are the honorable mentions. They all got cut. Like, that's
Yeah.
me making a decision. Let the record show. But Andreeva, fresh off of a semifinal at the French Open, feels like it's win, not if for her. So it has to be on the list by respect. Fernandez, quarterfinalist this week. Eye testing. I'm telling you, she's playing better ball than she has since the 2021 U.S. Open. Navarro, she just smooth with it. Quarterfinalist this week. Like, she is a real top 25 player, and it's shocking how much better she continues to get. It feels like with every passing match. Kostyuk, Chin Wen, we know what they've been this season. Noskova, she's in the win, not if category for me. Diana Schneider, I know this is going to sound self-promoting, college tennis, whatever. Diana Schneider is the most underrated 21 and under prospect in women's tennis right now. And I know like that's a unique category to say, but she's 20 years old, like just turned 20. She's an April 02, April 04 baby. Good math. April 04 baby. I looked this up yesterday, April 2nd, 2004. Happy early
Wow.
birthday to you, Diana Schneider.
Very happy. 10
Yeah,
months early. Happy
yeah,
birthday.
it's
Yeah.
just I'm getting on top of it here early. She's like 48 in the world. She's made 5 quarterfinals in her first full year of pro tennis. She left college last May. So 1 year later, she's top 50 in the world. Obviously, she had a head start going in, but like to do that at 20, she's not brought up in all the conversations because she doesn't have a win over Iga in a slam the way Noskova does. And obviously all the stuff Chin Wen and Goff and et cetera have done. She belongs in that conversation. That's why she's on this list. Because what if this is the one that it happens? And then just watch Niemeyer's forehand, former quarterfinalist at this event. I don't know if 24 is young, but I'm just waiting for it to happen still.
Oh,
Do you
Niemeyer is
like
the
the
name on this
narratives?
list. Niemeyer is the list on this name that I'm interested in of the eight presented here. Honestly, the rest not seeing so much in terms of them being potential. But no, just because I mean you're being comprehensive. You're going. This is your 18
What
players who
I
didn't
do.
make your top 12. So we're down in the 30s, around number 30 here. But Niemeyer as a grass court player, like if I was doing this more categories, I might have done a grass specialist or grass dark horse or always one to watch this time of year kind of things. I do think surface matters, and Niemeyer is that. Niemeyer was really what she was playing at Wimbledon 2022, the Russia ban year, as we mentioned before, asteriskable year, but made a quarterfinal, and just some real weapons there. So she's someone to watch. Definitely someone like a Swiatek would not want to see in the first week of this tournament for sure.
Ben made the quarterfinals of that next U.S. Open as well. Like that,
Quarters or I don't know if it was
or round of
quarters.
16. She definitely made
It
a
was
run at
third or
that
fourth
next
round.
U.S. Open.
Yeah,
I think it was
maybe she
quarters.
played Iga actually. Maybe she
Well, because I
played
think
Iga
I
there.
was
Now that I
looking
say
at this.
that,
But anyways, point is, yeah, I'm a surface specialist. Don't worry, you didn't have to make those categories, Ben. I'm the host. It's my job to make those categories. It's your job to
all right,
comment on the categories. All right.
good job,
Those are
good
the
job.
honorable
There's your comment.
mention. Now we can get into the good stuff. And again, we've got 3 tiers of contenders here. I always divided the tiers as how I defined it to you. Tier 1 is they end up with the title. No one's going to be shocked. We talked about the top 4 earlier. I imagine those are your tier 1s in some order. We'll get to that. Tier 2 for me is, would I be surprised if they win the title? Yes. Do I think there is
Hmm.
a reasonable pathway to a championship for a tier 2 player? I think it has to at least be a reasonable, plausible scenario to talk out. If you didn't at least have that, you didn't qualify for tier 2. And for me, a tier 2 player, it's quarterfinals or further. Got to get multiple wins in week 2 to consider it a successful event. Tier 3 is you're getting to week 2. And it's just a matter of, can you sustain a top level I've seen for 7 matches consecutively? That's how I look at my tier 3 players. Any criteria thoughts, Ben? Or are you ready to get into your list?
My list is a little bit grouped in subgroups, but not the strict tier system. I know you love a tier. I've been on your show enough times to know how
Yeah,
much you love tiers.
love them.
But
Almost as much as I love the book Naomi Osaka, Finding Her Path to Ben Rothenberg joining us. That's a callback for anyone who needs to
Naomi
know.
Osaka finding her path to Ben Rothenberg joining us. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Let's yeah, I'll be able to talk through my list when I get there, but it's not really probably as coherently food pyramided as yours is, let's
Well,
say.
that's again, host, guest. Let's get to your tier number 3 here. Did we divide this properly? Is this what your tier 3 was supposed to look? Oh, I think these are both of our tier 3s. No, this is your tier 3.
This is my list. Okay, so they're in different orders. So I did mine 10 to 9. So my number
Okay.
10 is Ange Jabeur, who I just
Okay.
like I had to put in my top 10, making the last 2 finals.
Oh,
Obviously, her
you
U.S.
have a bunch of ties here. Hold on. That's hilarious. It took me a
No,
second to see what
I
was going on. That's really good.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
Carry
yeah.
on.
So I basically just by
That's
herself in 10th,
great.
just by herself is
Hold
10th,
on.
by
Hold
herself in
on.
10th is Ange
Hold
Jabeur.
on. Hold on.
What?
I
What?
apologize for interrupting you. You
Yeah, go
give
ahead.
me all this shit about
Mhm.
18 names, and then you have 3 tied for 8th and 3 tied for 9th.
Yep.
This is why I will always be a fan of yours. Carry on,
Thank
my
you.
friend.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Ange Jabeur, let's get there before now the histrionics are done over there, hopefully. Ange Jabeur is been good at grass, and I underestimated her in 2023. I did not think she would be back. Sorry, in the final after making it the year before, after having a pretty lackluster year before that. And she did, and she beat some great players. And so I'm not going to count her out. She has to be in the top 10 people, however. Number 9 in my list, as I have it, is actually just Emma Raducanu. But with honorable
Wait,
mentions,
I'm going to stop you after
yes.
each name, just so you
Uh-huh.
know. And by
Okay.
the way, we
Sure.
mentioned Ostapenko already. This is nerdy stats via our friends at Tennis Abstract who have ELO ratings for us, measures who you play, what the score is against them versus the ranking and round, like the current rankings do.
Hmm.
Ostapenko is 4th in grass court raw ELO rating, meaning measuring everyone's grass court specific results. Just that. She is 4th in grass court raw ELO rating. You adjust for other surfaces as well, but with a grass lane, she's 6th in overall ELO rating. Here's why I bring that up as it relates to Ons Jabeur. She is number 1 in
Mm.
grass court raw ELO rating, according to Tennis Abstract. You want to adjust for other surfaces as well? Fine. She is still number 4 in grass court adjusted ELO rating. She is the back-to-back reigning Wimbledon finalist. And I know she hasn't had a topping result so far in the grass court season. But your barometer of where she stands going into Wimbledon, in my mind, is a barometer of how much of her you've actually watched so far this season. And so, spoiler alert, I have Jabeur as 5th on my
Okay,
list. She's one of my tier
fair.
2 players because her game works that well on this surface. And again, I know she hasn't had the eye-popping results, but that was a really fun first set between her and Goff last week that she was forced to retire from. She played well in her win over Noskova. I know she lost to Pliskova 7-5 in the third in Nottingham, but again, that was another really good match between the two. I think 10 is too low. Like I have Osaka on my list coming up here in tier number 3 in a moment as well. Just by pedigree alone on this surface, like Ons Jabeur has been really good on this surface over a couple of years consecutively now. And even Osaka at her best never was a grass court superstar. Like I get the health concerns if that's why you knock her, but I think 10's too low for Jabeur. Why that low? Why lower than others?
Health and just having a really underwhelming season. I mean,
quarterfinals of the French Open, though, like it has started to get better.
It's gotten better, but it just hasn't been great. Like maybe that's not enough recency bias, but the sort of long-term swoon I've seen from her has been notable. But Wimbledon, she does light it up. I think she'll be a real, magic. She should get a lot of big court placements. Fans will love her there. A huge sympathetic favorite for fans, obviously, with seeing how heartbreaking it was for her to come so close twice and not get there. Be amazing story if she can do it. I wanted to have her on my top 10 as a sort of sign of respect and nod to her pedigree. But in terms of actually 10 most likely players to win it, does my head doesn't really think so. It's more of a heart thing, I think, I would say, for Ons Jabeur, and who's got a lot of heart.
No, fair enough. Yeah, talk me through the 9s.
So my pick here was Emma Raducanu, really, was sort of be number 9 by myself. I don't know if she's anywhere on your lists. Maybe we'll see. We'll find out.
If I would have not submitted my list to Westhoff already for graphics, she would have been in the young players who could pop. Because, by the way, quietly still just
she's nowhere. You had busloads of players, and nowhere was Emma Raducanu, who just made semis in Nottingham and now just beat Pegula. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
No, I knew you were going to make the case, so make it.
Well, I appreciate you going quantity over quality with your picks. But Emma Raducanu, look, I mean, we've seen her do things kind of out of nowhere before in tennis, and the episode is titled "What Players to Watch," right? Yeah. So like, there's gonna be no one with a bigger spotlight on them, multiplied by ranking than Emma Raducanu will at this Wimbledon. And her game is good. As much as she flabbergasts and annoys people, honestly, with her scheduling and playing these really light spots. If she's picking her spots and wanting to peak at the right time, I watched her in Nottingham, that tournament, that semifinal against Bolter. I thought was really good. Bolter is I don't know if you have Bolter on your list. Bolter's the one person who I probably should have had, who I don't have on my list. I couldn't think of a narrative flow. We'll get to her if you have her.
The blasphemy for you to criticize me for leaving off Raducanu, and you left off Katie fucking Bolter, who won a title and beat Raducanu in Nottingham earlier this year. Carry on.
I wanted coherent narratives. She just didn't fit.
That's fair. I know that about you. That's fair.
So Raducanu, is there, and then I also have these two other sort of wild cardy players in Osaka and Andreescu, who are both also like Raducanu, U.S. Open champions, and also ranked outside the top 100, and also
So hold the Osaka thoughts, but because I have her on my list, so we'll get to her then. Make the case for Andreescu.
I mean, she just made the final in Hertogenbosch. She beat Osaka there in a really good quarterfinal. She started playing with they call I think it was Courtney, my friend Courtney of WTA Insider calls BB ball. I don't know if Andreescu herself has ever called it that, but she had coaches who tried to get her away from her variety and her dinks and her slices and chops to get her to be more of a ball basher, basically, to just be a more clean power baseliner. And she's shaking that off, and now she's going back to playing with variety, and that's the kind of chopping that can really work on grass. That match against Osaka, I thought was super, super high quality from both of them, and basically the sort of the variety and steadiness beat power in the end. In the match where both of them were playing, I thought, really top 20 level tennis, honestly, in that match. So Andreescu is impressed. She's a big tournament player, at least she was. She's someone who, again, no one would want to see across the net if she's in form and healthy. And I think that she deserves mention here. And I'll save Osaka. And then the other three.
Quickly on those two, just because, again, I like your list. Raducanu has been better over the last she's made 3 quarterfinals in her last 4 events. She made 3 total quarterfinals in 2022. She's playing her best tennis since the 2021 US Open.
She just got her first top 10 win today, which
of
is
her
crazy.
Career. And exactly. And even before that win, how well she's stepping into returns. I said this on the Mini Break podcast yesterday after her straight set win then, how routine she made that round one victory look this week in Eastbourne. And just the forehand is in rhythm right now. Can be pressured by pace, but she's starting to take that return of serve inside the baseline the way she did so magically during her 2021 U.S. Open run. And remember, before that U.S. Open run came a second week appearance at Wimbledon. If you remember well enough, there was the flame out and the pressure had clearly gotten to her in that moment. For her to just come back and go on this miraculous run in New York 2 months later was made the run that much more spectacular. She should have been in my young players to watch pop, and probably should have been number one on the young players to watch pop, because again, she has the crowd behind her. Now that's more pressure as well, but I think tennis wise, she belongs on this list. Certainly. Andreescu is just about health. The reason I left her out is because, do I think she can win one match against anyone? Absolutely. I need to see her play a month of consecutive tennis before I think she's going to win 7 straight matches at a major.
Well, this is where the sort of title of players to watch is more than most likely to make
contenders.
Round of 16. Yeah. Well, no, they're different to me. They're different to me. I mean, like we have contenders on the graphic. I understand the language varies, but like Andreescu is someone I'm circling the draw. I'm seeing where she is, rather than someone who's like, I don't know, like
it's fair.
Say Sakari or something who's not on my list, who maybe has a good chance to make a 4th round or something. I mean, who knows? So that's kind of how, or Vekic, let's say, who's not on my list either. Someone like that who's steadier.
To your point, it's a great upside pick. Like tier 3 is a place to take swings. I don't hate the BB inclusion, truth be told. She was a name that lingered in my mind, even if somehow she nor Raducanu ended up on
Can I add one more Raducanu thought?
Please.
Raducanu, I think her issues I think Tumani, who's on NCR a lot these days, talks about this. I think the real issue with Raducanu has that's such jealousy or what that was. You're welcome to come on anytime you want. But it's physical. Raducanu has not proven that she has the durability to be a full-time tour player. She keeps getting these injuries. Yeah, she has coaching changes, and whatever you say about pressures, like it's probably there, but physically, it just hasn't been the issue. Wimbledon, having played a really light schedule beforehand, Wimbledon is probably the least physically taxing of the Grand Slam. She's not going to get into like any 3-hour grind fest on grass. She can keep things kind of light and to her terms and quick paced on grass, and it hopefully isn't too physically grueling of a tournament for her. And when she is healthy and not worn down, I mean, she won that US Open at a sprint pace, not going, winning all the sets, even if it wasn't starting quality. It's never, what was it, 20 sets, no tie breaks, I think only 175. Like she kept it really efficient. And that kind of within matches efficiency can happen for her at Wimbledon. So I like this conditions for her actually to be her next big result. Some quick court, whether Wimbledon or some other really fast court she finds somewhere else.
Fair enough. Make the case for your 8s.
So this is basically just like group them together. These were all in your sort of first list of discards, but basically these are Russians who are really good and who are under the radar and who I don't have enough to say about to fill a full number on their own. So they're sharing this spot. Alexandrova, Samsonova, they've both been really dominant players in the grass lead-ups in recent years. Samsonova won. He seems so amused. He seems so tickled over there. But Samsonova won Berlin a couple years ago. That was where she really splashed out. Alexandrova has been really good in the Netherlands before they play each other in the semifinal there a couple weeks ago. Samsonova won that tournament. This year, Kalinskaya just made the final in Berlin. She's had a good year. She's beaten Swiatek. I think people forget that match, but she did beat Swiatek in Dubai, I think it was. Doha, Dubai. And
semifinals.
Dubai.
We haven't forgotten. 1 of 3 on the year.
There you go. And she's, she seems to be sort of feeling herself or enjoying the moment. She nearly won Berlin, obviously, at 5 championship points against Pegula. So all of them are in here as plausible people who I think could easily all make like a semifinal of this Wimbledon tournament. And so I wanted to have them in my top 10 just based on pure numbers and deserving it.
Grass court raw ELO rating, Katerina Alexandrova 6th. According to Tennis Abstract. Yeah, I think she belongs on that list. Now, Kalinskaya, the prolonged track record isn't there, but, you look at yearly ELO ratings and specific results. Obviously, she starts to jump up when you look at those categories. The big number, obviously, she's 9th in the points race right now, coming off of a final. Her aggression works. Okay, I brought this up on Gil's show. We are going to do one tangent here because this is a moment that I think... No, 10 years ago, you were kind of a little bit too mainstream. No, I was still listening 10 years ago. But like 2012, Ben would have been all over this. Honestly, 2014, Ben, it's a segment on NCR with you and Courtney.
Okay.
Yannick Sinner, Hala, Stadium court. You win the trophy. First grass title of your career, first title as world number one. To go out there on that stage and say, you know, my girlfriend had 5 match points today, but she lost. Like, talk about an all-time crazy move from Jannik Sinner. Like, how can you go out there and, like, you could have said she made the final. And if that's the description, that's great. But to be like, you know, she had 5 match points and lost. Like, that's a fucking dagger. Like, you know, there's a text after, like, Jannik, come on. Like, we got to talk about this. We got to work on this moving forward.
You're
Cahill
saying text,
not
a text from Anna, a text from any of his friends saying,
that's what I'm
this?
saying. Or yeah, like, or Darren Cahill's like, look, we'll talk match tactics in a second. You weren't able to break Hubie today, but dude, don't bring up the match points ever again.
Yeah, you could say the phrasing was a little bit too specific and clinical to say the 5 championship points, 5 match points, whatever term he used. Yeah, when you could just say came really close and didn't, you know, something else like a little more euphemistic. But you know, she knows
first grass court final.
This relationship seems new. I don't know how much
phase.
I don't know how much dating history Jannik has had, and I was associated with some. I honestly, like, I don't know. You know, he's a young guy. You know, first maybe full high profile relationship he's had. So a bit of a fumble, but you know, he's a very sweet kid, Jannik.
What
so
I'm saying
is,
is
it comes from a
being in the honeymoon,
definitely not malicious. Definitely not malicious.
What I'm saying is being in the honeymoon phase of a relationship, good for Jannik, good for Kalinskaya. Win-win. So I don't hate her being on this list. And again, she was in my dangerous veterans out of respect. Alexandrova, I mentioned the grass.
It also, I mean, it might be worth mentioning. I don't know, probably maybe not, but being associated with Sinner as the top man will, especially at Wimbledon, get Kalinskaya a lot more tabloid attention. Like, there will be, like, she will be in, like, big press conferences. She'll be a story and a character.
Interesting.
Because of how the British tabloids operate. Absolutely, 100%.
Do we see
100%.
her in the box for Jannik Sinner, who will be at center court at some point? Or do you think they're at, like, sit in the player box status?
Wasn't he just oohing yourself?
I think that's a great question by me.
Congratulations to you. Was on your reward from yourself. Wasn't Sinner, I don't know all of this. Wasn't Sinner at her matches in Paris? Did he go courtside, outer courts?
That's a Ben question before now.
I think he did. I think he did. I don't know.
Respected.
It depends on how they feel, if they're comfortable. It can be exhausting being about, especially Wimbledon. God, I wouldn't recommend it, because you'd be on camera, like, between every point. You'd be so on to be in the box of Wimbledon. If she's already been eliminated and is hanging around, that's a different story. But if to go in there while on her off days or later in her days, it would be a really exhausting thing. And if you've ever been in a player box, you know, I haven't personally in terms of being in the support team, but I've heard from people, it's exhausting. Just being that dialed into a match is an exhausting way to watch a match, and to be on, you know, and try to make sure that you're projecting the right energy for the player at all times. Like, it's not relaxing to go sit and watch a match in a player box for a top player.
Yeah, fair enough. But again, there's your ranking. So if you had to definitively give it, would you go Kalinskaya 8, Raducanu 9, Jabeur 10?
No, the Russians are a set. The Russians are it's a Matryoshka doll.
So
no, it's a nesting doll with Russians.
What's that called?
Matryoshka doll. Yeah.
Okay,
nesting doll.
You know, there was an over-under on DraftKings of if you would say the word Matryoshka doll today. And shout out to anyone who hit that prop, because I think it was like plus 750. So job well done by them. All right, that's your tier 3. Again, there will be a little bit of overlap in the Naomi Osaka name, who ends up at 12th on my list. This is an eye test thing. Oh my God, was Naomi good on the? I've never seen her hit her forehand like that on a grass court than the way she hit it in Den Bosch, and just in general through these first 2 weeks of grass court play for her. Here's the sneaky fact: Naomi Osaka this year is holding 81.2% of the time. Picked things up right where she left things off. You go by hold percentage right now amongst top 50 players, she would trail just Iga in hold percentage, and Iga being at 83.8, number 1 in hold and break percentage. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's an eye test thing more than a numbers thing. Now, you do look at the numbers for Naomi Osaka. It's more grass court matches than you think. Osaka 20-16 overall on the surface. She made a 50K final back in 2015, if you want to go that far. But semifinals Nottingham 2018, has made third round of Wimbledon a couple of times. That's why she can't be higher than tier 2, because even if her level is returning, even at her best, she wasn't the best at Wimbledon. But the profile makes sense. Her serve, how well she hits the backhand return early. I thought the forehand's an issue, and you would imagine on the surface because of the big backswing, it might be, but she's hitting it really freely. She's moving extraordinarily well. What are your expectations, draw aside? If Osaka gets a reasonable draw, no
Yeah.
tier one players before round 3, so none of the big 4, would you expect her to get to the second week?
Look, I mean, I think she's that good that it's draw independent. I mean, like she nearly beat Iga Swiatek at Roland Garros,
I
right? No one
agree.
else came close. And
17 for her, 17 for the rest, right? Or
it's
whatever it was.
it's interesting because on paper, I've gotten a lot of questions, obviously, as I've been talking about Naomi, in book context, like, oh, how's her year been, or what do you think of her comeback so far? And my answer before the French Open certainly had been that it had been whelming, neither over nor underwhelming, just whelming. It'd been fine. It'd
Yeah.
been nothing bad,
Status
nothing.
quo.
No, yeah, like nothing that especially impressive, and nothing especially unimpressive. Like it just sort of was floating there at this very clear par level for quite a while. And then the Iga result, even though she didn't finish it off, but having match point against Iga Swiatek at Roland Garros is so huge. And that's your worst, when it should be your toughest slam, even if she has less comfort on grass. And interesting, obviously, doing the book, diving into, there's a little bit of section on her on grass in there. And she was, basically she had a slip and fall injury in 2016 that sort of stuck in her head and was undermining her confidence. And so when she wasn't feeling good about her game generally, the sort of voice in her head, the sort of negative voice, the inner saboteur, as they say, would sort of tell her, you don't like this, it's dangerous, it's slippery, and she would lose confidence. And some of her losses weren't even that bad. Like she lost in 2019, which is the last year she played on grass before this year, amazingly. She lost back-to-back matches to Putintseva. She lost her second round in Birmingham when she was number 1, and then in first round Wimbledon on center court to Putintseva. Putintseva is one of those players who can chop it up on the grass, and we just saw her win Birmingham. Under game that she's made work on grass, and she had a very clear game plan against Naomi, and Naomi wasn't in a particularly great headspace there. But yeah, where all that to say, the results track record for Naomi on grass, not good. Never made fourth round there. But the eye test, as you said with her, is so good this season. And as she said, I think after her loss in Paris, like, I feel like I'm playing really well. It's just the results aren't resulting, was the phrase she used. And I think that's completely right. Like, she is playing really well. If her coach is happy with her level, when I've communicated with him in the last, I don't know what the last time was, but during this year, he's been really happy with her progress. And he's not someone to sort of blow sunshine in these situations. He's pretty realistic. And so, yeah, eventually, if she keeps playing this level, I think at Wimbledon or US Open or, one of the tournaments in between or Olympics even, I think there will be a breakout result for her. I think she will get to, the business end of one of these tournaments. I think that she's just playing too well not to. She's in a situation also where everyone's going to play their best against her. She is still a big fish in this pond. And a lot of these players who don't have the tens of millions in endorsements, whatever else, really kind of, lick their chops for a chance to take out someone in a situation. Tennis has always worked that way. Women's tennis probably especially. And yeah, and so she's got a target on her back still, but she is playing pretty freely and in a good spot. So I definitely wanted her in my top 10 for sure.
Serving well, moving better, I would argue, than she had. Just moving better with every passing match.
Her fitness has gotten much better over the course of this year, and the movement is too. But especially in Paris, I mean, she just looked so good and so fast, and endurance was good.
She looked good in the Chinwag match too. She looked good in the BB match, the Iga match. The problem is, again, she wasn't able to be on the winning side of any of those matches. That's why she just misses out on the top 10 for me. We talked Vondrousova earlier. It's as simple as this. She's the reigning Wimbledon champ. Like, you have to respect that to a certain degree. And for her, the issue hasn't been results. It's been, she just has been unhealthy. Like her, Muchova, Krejcikova, we thought we were in a Czech renaissance. None of them have been healthy over the course of the past year. I respect the lefties variety too much. Longtime believer in her game. She rounds out again 11, just misses out for me. But then we get into the top 10. Ben Rothenberg, and look, it's not the highest on her list of accomplishments, but Victoria Azarenka, I would argue, pretty solid grass court player throughout the course of her career. Not exceptional by any metric.
She's a good all-surface player, Azarenka.
And again, any surface where she can play offense, that's going to bring out her best. The fun advanced stat for you, Ben, because I know you love when I do these clubs. 3 players right now, top 15 in both hold and break percentage. Azarenka is one of them. Azarenka has had a sneaky, exceptional year by win percentage. Victoria Azarenka 24-11 overall on the year. Now, can you name one notable result for Azarenka in that 24-11 streak? Maybe not. But she's been playing pretty well week in, week out. A bunch of different quarterfinals or holding seed results for her. Again, you can't win the tournament in week number one. You can certainly lose it. This is someone who's held seed all year long. Her power tennis, how well she's serving. It only takes one break for her to front run on this surface, and there's an institutional know-how for her on grass that really does lack for much of the top of the field. I throw her in at the number 10 spot. I don't feel horrible about it.
I think I almost could say her career on grass has probably been disappointing. I mean, I feel
Well,
like
she's
the way
outside
that
the top
modern
20 in ELO rating for grass courts. So yeah, there's not a ton for her to go
right.
for.
I'm just thinking in terms of eye tests. Like
Yeah, sure.
looking at her game, she stands right on the baseline, hits flat, and reflects power back at the player. That should work on grass. You should be able to hold the baseline and play almost, I don't know, like Leighton Hewitt kind of style, just like counterpunching, and she's, Azarenka, actually, I think people, it's one thing I've noticed, certainly in recent years, maybe probably the whole time, actually is not the hardest hitter of the ball. I think
Yeah.
because of her grunt, people think that she hits the ball way harder than she does, honestly, but the ball actually doesn't move that fast. But with the way she hits it flat and low, grass could help it along. And I think that actually her match against Svitolina at Wimbledon last year was a good match. It was on court one. Svitolina won it. It was one of the, I think, 4 or 5 wins Svitolina had over past slam champs or number ones, whatever that stat was, that Svitolina had at that tournament. Yeah, I think she's reasonable 10. I kind of, let's say sold my stock on Azarenka in terms of her being like a constant dark horse in every conversation in women's tennis for the last 5 years. I don't think she's delivered enough to really justify that for me. So she's
Yeah.
not on my list.
Hasn't made it past the 4th round at Wimbledon since 2015. Did make
Yeah.
back-to-back semis in 11 and 12.
And she also made Wimbledon, Olympic semis on
Sure,
grass and made it,
2012.
won a bronze medal there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And won the mixed gold.
Yeah. Before making the Berlin quarters this year, hadn't made a quarterfinal on grass court since 2021. Now, obviously didn't play in 2022 as she's Belarusian, but still worth mentioning. I don't mind Azarenka at number 8 on my list. That you excluded Katie Bolter, I should just throw out your list and disqualify it moving forward because that is a
getting awfully
you,
huffy about your number 9.
Well, I just think that's a tough look for you, my dear friend, because you look for Katie Bolter, and not only has she obviously won a title this year on grass courts, not only did she win a title last year on grass courts, you look at the grass court ELO ratings. They're a big believer in Katie Bolter. She's 5th in raw grass court ELO rating. You want to adjust for other results? Fine. She's 10th on that list as well. That matches what I see with my eyes. Like her line drive tennis on this surface just works. And this is a weird thing to say, but this is, again, and in grass courts, I meant to say this in the criteria portion. You don't have the biggest sample size. A lot of this has to be qualitative. It has to be in qualitative analysis in tennis is just via the eye test. How Katie Bolter takes the return early, how she can do it off both wings, that she seems to thrive in home conditions in front of this crowd as well, that it feels like in what is, by the way, been a miraculous, like not all capital letters, but capital B breakout year for someone in her mid-20s to be playing, I think she's 20th in the points race right now. Unexpected development, certainly. I think she's a top, like, again, like you're telling me the play of Samsonova or Alexandrova has been more inspiring than Bolter of late? No, like if I asked you Ben Rothenberg right now, Katie Bolter's playing, they're both well rested, equal rested. Bolter plays Alexandrova tomorrow at Wimbledon. You're picking Katie Bolter. And by virtue of that, I think she has to be higher on your list than she is. She's 9 for me on this list. I legitimately think like I would pick her over Vika. I would pick her over Vondrousova. The Osaka matchup is different because of the power the power challenge Osaka brings. And again, upside, I'm a big believer in what Osaka could do this tournament. Much like you, I'm very bullish on her back half of the year. But I legitimately think like she beat Ostapenko today. Like of all the other names, she beat Raducanu a couple weeks ago in Nottingham. She has earned her place at 9. This isn't a hot take. Like this is a no. She should be at 9.
Look, I'm not going to argue too hard against her. I don't know if I would take her. I don't know if I would
win the argument.
No, of course not. I don't know that I would take her over Alexandra. I don't know that I would take her over Alexandrova or Samsonova though. Is what you you put those words in my mouth. I'm not sure that I would.
Samsonova's interesting.
or even Kalinskaya. Like I think that my Matryoshka doll of three Russians, I think it's very solid at my number 8.
I
And
think she has a lot of similarities to those, particularly Alexandrova in playing style. Just the line drive
I
off
re
both
I
wings, like the
really like Katie
margins.
Bolter's game.
Yeah.
The first time I remember watching her, I would have watched her at Hopman Cup. She was there in 2019, the final
Okay.
Hopman Cup in Australia,
R.I.P.
and she was playing with she was with Cam Norrie there playing there,
Sure.
and I saw her a bit there, but didn't honestly pay too much attention to her. And then I really started paying more notice to her in 2021, I guess it was, where she second round Wimbledon. Played really tough against Sabalenka on center court. Really pushed Sabalenka. She was a wild card. I think she was like 200 or so. She had some injuries and just really played a really excellent match. A lot of variety, a lot of sort of guile and own the stage. But it's a question for me with Bolter of how she's going to handle being in the spot at Wimbledon. The British pressure is different, and I haven't seen her handle it yet. Nottingham is completely off the radar. That was a very low key tournament. She didn't play anybody in the top. Well, I played Pliskova was number 50, and that was the highest ranked player she beat in that Nottingham run. So I discounted a bit, even if it did help her raw grass court elo to bound up a bit. I'm not totally convinced by that there. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I would love to see her do well. She's probably what if my list was, I don't know, 13, 14 people? She would be right outside it. I just had my little groupings, and she didn't fit conveniently into one of my groupings, basically, what it was.
Could have thrown her an honorable mention, but we'll let that slide. Yeah, I mean, again,
I
the
didn't,
argument.
I didn't have multiple slides of honorable
Yeah,
mention,
no,
but
the
here, yes.
argument is Katie Bolter's never made a second week at a major. Now you're going to make her a top 10 contender for the Wimbledon
Yeah,
title. I'm
fair.
not. She's tier 3. It's like, look, if she plays her best, she'll be in week 2.
But look,
That's half the ball game.
her slam losses this year are not bad. She lost second round of Australian Open to Zheng Qinwen, who made the final, and then she lost first round of Roland Garros to Badosa, which is a really hard first round on clay. She lost
Yeah,
in the
but
U.S. Open to Peyton Stearns. Not a great loss actually, but not a terrible loss.
Stearns was playing
Um,
really well too.
yeah, and
During
and
this.
Bolter has picked up since then.
Yeah,
And last year
absolutely.
Wimbledon she lost to Rybakina. 1-1, granted, which is not great, but still
I'm just saying,
Rybakina.
and she will be seated at this year's event. I think she'll
Yeah.
sneak one in, a lower 30 seed. So again, getting to week 2 will be a challenge, but she has the level to do it. And I think she could beat a Sabalenka with a shoulder issue, a Rybakina who doesn't have that much form. Her weapons will give Coco Gauff trouble. She would
Oh,
even
this could give
give.
Swiatek trouble.
Yeah,
We'll see.
that's gonna
We'll
be
see.
my punchline there at the end, and
Yeah.
that's why she's number 9 on my list.
Okay.
Last but not least, here in tier 3, number 8, Danielle Collins. Here's my question for you, Ben Rothenberg, and we'll do this player in particular quickly. Danielle Collins has played 394 matches in particular. 394 matches overall in her pro career. How many of them in particular have been on grass courts?
I'd probably say something like 20.
15.
Yeah,
15. She's
not
6 and
many.
9 on grass courts in her career. She's never made it past the third round at Wimbledon. She's never
So
made a
that's not
quarterfinal on
great.
grass courts, period. She is the 5th best player in the world this year. She
Yeah.
cannot be above tier 3 because of that grass court resume. She is 8th on my list and the last player in this. Look, she's still Danielle freaking Collins, but the resume is just rough.
I'll just say she is the lowest player on my tier 2.
So that's how
So
we can transition to it.
we have her very similarly placed. Yeah, Danielle Collins. She's in the bottom of my tier 2. And I
Ooh,
I
beautiful. I like your
see
list.
my thematic coherence here. I was
Yeah.
going for something here of the Americans and who I want to slam in tier 2. And yeah, Collins, like her year has been so amazing. And we'll go to some of the players in tier 1 in a minute or several minutes probably. But
So two of our three names.
when you're playing so well, it doesn't matter what the surface is on some level. And I think Collins is just her year is that good that she can transcend a bit. But if she's someone at 6 and 9, not a good record. If she's someone who just has bad mojo on grass and just wants to stay healthy for Olympics and doesn't want to go all out, she could tank. Not tank like literally not try, but tank as in just sort of like sink.
Yeah.
Just not really deliver. I don't know.
She hasn't won 7 total matches on a grass court. Seeing her win 7 grass court matches at this Wimbledon.
I don't think Vondrousova had either before last year.
That is interesting. But that was Oh, actually, the Collins stuff is injury related as well. Anyways, Jabeur was my 10. She's the inclusion in tier 2 I have that you do not. We overlap on our other two players in Jessica Pegula and
Hmm.
Madison Keys. I want to start with the keys of it all because David Kane, our dear friend who joins me on this show, and I often get into debates about Madison Keys and what her upside looks like. For what it's worth, Madison Keys, number 10 in overall ELO rating, just misses out on the top 10. She's 14th in grass court raw ELO rating. You want to adjust for results elsewhere. She's 9th in that grass court adjusted ELO rating. My case for Madison Keys, and I've said this a bunch, over the last 30 months, so 2.5 years, quietly, when she's played, she's been one of the 8 best players in the world. And there are some slam results that point to that sort of consistency and upper echelon performances at time. Obviously, semifinals 2022 Australian Open, semifinals last year's US Open, quarterfinals last year's Wimbledon. Madison Keys is serving well. She's swinging freely. Obviously, she kicks off her grass court season this week, trying to get some matches in before the start of Wimbledon. I thought she looked pretty good in her first match victory today. You know, with the weapons she possesses on this surface, success there makes sense. Keys right now, one of 8 players to rank top 20 in both hold and break percentage. I've seen her win 5 matches. I've seen her beat good players to win those 5 matches in recent memory. 6 and 7 have always been the tricky ones for Madison Keys. And that's why, obviously, would be the argument for putting her perhaps in tier number 3. But I think tennis wise, eye test wise, numbers wise, recent result wise, how she's played this season, where, by the way, Madison Keys, sneaky consistent overall on the year. Keys so far this season, 16 and 6 in the matches she's played. Like, I think she belongs in tier 2. I see a plausible scenario where she serves well enough and gets to the final. Now, winning that final depends who the opponent is, but her peak level is there. And like, there's enough slam continuity there to make the case for tier 2. Do you agree? Evidently you do. Why?
I do. I mean, I think that yeah, her year's been good. The slams have been strong. She is, that match she had at the U.S. Open last year, semifinal against Sabalenka, was my, sort of most heartbreaking match of 2023 in a lot of ways. She was playing so well that tournament, the way she demolished Von Joshua, the way she demolished Pagula in that tournament, and she was up. She bageled Sabalenka to start that match, right? And then she goes and loses the next 2 sets in very tight tiebreaks. She had a lead in that second set also, and it's just painful to watch. And that was a match that was unreal from Sabalenka, where I thought Sabalenka really consolidated that number 1 ranking she had just clinched during that tournament with how she was able to dig out that win over really treeing Keys, honestly. And Keys had much more quietly made the quarterfinals of Wimbledon before that. She missed the first couple of months of this year, didn't play until Indian Wells. So not a full schedule of results for her this season, but she's been really strong. And yeah, I think that, there are certain things about Keys' game that have where she's never really quite fulfilled some of her potential. I mean, Keys has been talking about my entire career covering tennis, basically. I don't know if she was honestly, I mean, I forget if she was already a wild card in Miami the first year I ever went there in 2012 from IMG, but close to that, something like that. She was someone who was very much, I talk about this in the Naomi book, actually. Keys was someone who was very much, Naomi was off the radar and when she was coming up as a kid, and Keys was on the radar. Keys was the factory, sort of Chris Evert, IMG type player who was really there. And that adds pressure and everything to it. And there are certain times where she's hit a bit of a ceiling in terms of, footwork, whatever you want to say, just sort of, shot selection, whatever it may be. But when it's working, it's working. And I thought everything was really working at that US Open last year, and she just didn't get there. And that sucks. It's tough as an athlete when you feel like you did everything right and it still wasn't enough. That had to be a brutal loss for her, and I felt for her there. All that to say, yeah, she's absolutely still in very much a classic tier 2 player. I think in your tier system here, we both have her there. The upside is big. If she gets the serve fire, she can win a lot of free points. She can the forehand is big. Wants to play a lot of long rallies. I think that the game could. I mean, she's done also. I don't know how many grass titles she has, but I'm surprised in the ELO or whatever that she's not higher, because she's won Eastbourne I think a couple times. She's won Birmingham a couple times, or at least once. I mean, she's won a bunch of good grass tournaments, just never Wimbledon. Wimbledon has. I mean, she never had Wimbledon semi, which is surprising because she's made semis in Paris even. So Wimbledon's just kind of underperformed, but I think she's due / maybe running out of time in her career to make that Wimbledon run that we think she can and that she deserves.
That's the last piece for all these players in this tier. Jabeur, Collins, Keys, obviously Pegula. The window's closing. The era
Hmm.
of Iga is upon us. Sabalenka feels like she could get to 5 slams. Like me, I don't think she had got 10 in her, just given where she is in the age curve. The oldest 25-year-old we have in the world, because like it feels like a 26-year-old now, excuse me, but it feels like she has been a part of our lives for over a decade. If you told me she was 29, I'd believe it. Still, like she's 26, smack dab in her prime. Rybakina 25, peaks of her powers coming up, if not already. Swiatek only going to get better. Goff only going to get better. Obviously, there are a lot of fun prospects on the rise as well. It's like you have kind of 6 more slams to sneak one in, and we'll call it 5 more slams because you're not beating Iga at Roland Garros. All these players, he's less so than Pegula and Jabeur, but Sakari would be on this list if she was playing better. I call them the byproducts of the COVID era, right? Since September or August 2020, these players have emerged as top 10 players. Pegula, Jabeur, Sakari are the faces of that conversation. Keys just happens to be with them from an age curve perspective. It's
Hmm.
like, this is your window. And more than anything, Wimbledon's your shot because this is where Iga's at her worst. And I don't mean that to be dismissive of Sabalenka and Rybakina, whose power tennis you feel like should be best on this surface relative to the field. But it's like, it feels like Wimbledon is your biggest opportunity if you're this field. And yeah, there's just got to be some urgency for Keys right now. I mean, everything that we just said about Keys applies for Pegula. Why is she higher, number 1 in your tier 2, the same for you, the same way she is for me?
Yeah, it's a little bit form. I mean, just won Berlin. Is a great moment for her. She didn't have a great season when she was playing, and then missed a bunch of time with injury. This year's been a rough year for her for sure. She split with David Witt, longtime coach, who had all of that pandemic success that you mentioned. All of it been with him, so a disruption to her team and her rhythms for sure there. But yeah, the Berlin result was there, and she was gritty. You know, she's underratedly gritty as a competitor on court. I think she said, "I'm tough" at some point, and in some post match interview about why it's hard to beat her, and she is a tough customer. And I think her game. Look, when I look back at when I autopsy or not autopsy, when I excavate the when I examine whatever it is, when I sift through the Von Joshua win last year, which again I still find a confounding, dare say meaningless win.
Autopsy is the
Uh,
right word.
Autopsy, sure. Meaningless is harsh. I don't mean that.
Yeah.
I mean like just sort of random, a highly random result. I still think it is. She was down 4-1 in the third to Pegula in that quarterfinal, and the roof closed, and Pegula, lost from there. If Pegula's in that semifinal, maybe she wins Wimbledon. I mean, she runs into Svitolina, who was running out of gas, and then she runs into Jabeur, who's running out of gas. I think that could have been Pegula's slam, 2023 Wimbledon. But she has not made it past the quarters famously at slams. I think she's in the mix, and she's good against Iga often. She's had
Yeah.
several wins last year against Iga. I think she can be in there. Yeah, I think that she's just recency bias a bit with the Berlin title and also long-term form.
It,
I would love to see her just get a semi before she retires.
it's tough because she just won a title last week. What would you guess she is in the points race?
Ooh, not that high. I would say probably she's like 18.
Do you want Price's Right rule? Well, okay. Price's Right rules apply here because 18 is technically lower than her actual spot. She's 16. You're two
Yeah.
points off. So we're
It's a
going to
it's
allow
a
that with
that's a
adjusting.
great it's a great
Yeah.
bid. Great bid though. Great bid. Yeah.
No, and it's just like it feels like the floor fell out from underneath her for the first time
Mhm.
in half a decade. And she's still 16th in the points race. Like
Yeah.
kind of tip of the cap. And again, workman like last week on her way to the title. She had match point today before Raducanu was able to get over the finish line. And again, the match point she lost was on Raducanu's serve. Raducanu had good
Raducanu wasn't on any of your
+1.
graphics. That's wild.
Where was Katie Bolter for yours?
Yeah.
Anyways, I agree. Like we agree on Pagula, we agree on Keys. There are more
we
agreements than we
we
disagree.
agree here. We agree. And I
Can I
covered
say Gil
Jabeur.
Gross and I
Yeah,
agreed far too much, so I appreciate your disagreements. A little different flavor here. That's what I was hoping
of
for. But
course.
it's the urgency argument for all of these players more than anything. It's like again, this is your window, Jessica Pagula, and do I think she's playing well enough right now to win 7 in a row? I don't. Do I think she's back to playing a top 8 level of tennis? She absolutely is for the first time this season. And that's the big picture development for her. Now, we have the same players in the top 4. Do we have the same order of our tier 1 contenders, Ben Rothenberg? We'll start on your side of
Drum
the
roll.
equation. Show me. Hold on. What is this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 here? What did I stumble upon as I look at this final graphic
I don't
of
know what
yours?
this graphic is.
Okay, then we might have messed this
That's
up.
not
Well,
that's not mine though.
that's
I
not
don't
mine
have.
either. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to go to the host screen. We'll look at me and you. We have the same top 4.
Oh,
As I load my graphic, Ben, talk me through your order.
okay, because I didn't have Pavlini listed anywhere in my
Yeah.
stuff, so I'm not sure where that list
Yeah.
was. My number 4 is Coco Gauff.
Okay.
You know, it's an eye test thing again. She's been winning so ugly most of this year. This is your list. Okay, very
This
similar
is
to mine. Very similar to mine. So I have Golf 4 and Rybakina 3 also. So that's the same.
But
And
you flipped the top 2.
I flipped the top 2.
Interesting. So, by the way, I figured out it was a graphic from last week, so we're gonna get that switched out. That makes that top 8 heading into the second half was the graphic that showed. So we'll show your list here in a second.
Okay.
We can do the Goff and Rybakina, since we agree, we'll do those quickly.
Yeah.
Goff is 21-9 on grass courts in her career. She's 32-10, one of 5 players with 30 plus wins overall on the season. Again, like that, you can point to opportunities where she didn't play well, Indian Wells, French Open, and yet she still was semifinals of those 2 events. Like, she has proven her base level is, look, I'm a top 8 player. I'm going to beat who I'm supposed to beat. I mentioned the stats against opponents ranked outside the top 20 so far this year. That said, her forehand on this surface, the serve being, again, she is the lesser version of Iga. And I mean that in the highest of compliments. To be 90% of Iga means you're probably a Hall of Fame player. The problem is the 100% version exists in the actual Iga Swiatek. I think her serve has gotten better. Her volleys have gotten better. Coco Gauff quietly was just dropped to number 2 in break percentage this year. But she, like, again, I almost put her in her own tier just because Rybakina, Sabalenka have the weapons they do, and Iga's Iga. But 21-9 on grass courts, she's pretty darn good on this surface, Ben.
I first saw her in person, well, as a pro, because I first saw her US Open Juniors against Anisimova. There's my list. Yeah, so very similar to yours. I first saw her, yeah, on grass, and it worked for her. And I think the grass, can clean up some of her shots a little bit, not dissimilar to how it worked for Venus Williams. So I know it's sort of obvious physical comparison in terms of both being very, very fast, long-legged players who cover the court, really, really a lot of raw speed there. Venus was always helped on grass because she sort of instinctively shortened up her forehand and made it less complicated on grass. And I think Coco could maybe do some of the same stuff. Her last year Wimbledon result was rough, but it was playing a really peaking Kenin. What can you do? Kenin does that to a lot of top players. She just kind of lingers in the shrubs and jumps out and scares top players every now and again at this point in her career. Golf has been good in terms of results and very steady. The issue for Golf in her career in the short to mid term is Iga Swiatek.
Yeah.
And Iga Swiatek, who just dominates
she has an Iga problem.
She has a huge Iga problem. And I hope that her team, I talked about this after she lost at the French Open. I hope that her team is addressing that head on and not ducking that and not pretending it's not there, because how she fares against Iga will determine the altitude of her career ultimately.
We're going to save that conversation
profound.
for a different time because I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it's also like, you think about it, what would the adjustments even be? Like, that's the most.
The adjustment is you get on grass and Iga loses before you have to play her. That's the adjustment. That's why I like Coco having a next slam at Wimbledon potentially.
But here's the counter. She's never made the quarterfinals of Wimbledon. Round of 16 a couple of times. She has never advanced to the quarterfinals.
But look who she lost to. I mean, it's been good. I mean, let me look at her.
Kerber and Halep in those 2 round of 16s. Not bad. She lost to Anisimova 2022. She loses Ken in 3 sets last year.
Not that
again.
Bad.
I have her in tier 1 as well. I'm saying why she can be no higher than 4th, because she's very much beaten who she's supposed to beat. The serve has gotten beefed up. I think she's put on muscle. Like, she just hits the ball bigger now than she once did.
She's getting older. She should be. She's filling out normal for an athlete.
Always been a comfortable volleyer as well. Again, the forehand is a liability, particularly against the 3 opponents on screen with her: Sabalenka, Swiatek, and Rybakina. I have too much respect, though, for everything else in her game, how well she competes, at slams in particular. She has to be tier one. There is just a gap between
Yeah.
her and the Pagulas and the Keys of the world, and Collins and Jabber's, just
Even if
no
she just
doubt.
lost to Pagula, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I do.
Now,
Yeah.
if you wanted to put her in her own tier, I would listen to that conversation. But for the sake of continuity, I kept her here as
Yeah.
well. On the Rybakina side of things, Elena Rybakina, 35-7 overall in the year, 28-10 in her career on grass courts, 2022 Wimbledon champion, obviously quarterfinalist last year, losing in 3 to Jabber. Was forced to retire in her matchup against Azarenka in Berlin. That sounded like it was more due to illness than any structural damage we have to worry about. Of the tier one players, Ben Rothenberg, she's the only one who's won a Wimbledon title. Why isn't she at number one? Because I think we all know why her game style works on this surface.
Yeah, I mean, I basically just don't think that she's been reliable health-wise. I don't know what's going on with her.
Yeah.
It's concerning how much time she's missing from the tours. And I'm sure that each form that was obviously just to go to Wimbledon and practice. I don't know how much health was a consideration there. But yeah, she's just had times where she's looked frail or whatever, or just sort of just not robust. That's the way you'd want someone to be. And so putting too much of your eggs in that basket, I do think she is at risk of some sort of withdrawal, honestly, or just an early loss where she's looking faint or whatever it may be. And she retired against Azarenka 3-1 in the first in Berlin. I'm not sure what the reason was given there, but yeah, it's just been she has not inspired confidence in that level this year. But when she's good, she's good. I mean, that's the thing. When she is healthy and in form, she's been great, and there's no one in this field she can't beat.
When she's played this year healthy, the only legitimate losses, she lost to Blinkova, round of 64 Australian Open.
22-20 in the tiebreak, yes.
And that's it. Like the Azarenka loss, retirement. She loses to Paolini, was a 3-set
Miami
match.
final to Collins was a real loss, but it was a final.
No,
yeah.
But that's not a bad loss. That's
Not
like
a bad loss, no.
an informed Collins who was striking the hell out of the ball.
Oh,
Like,
I didn't realize you said bad loss. Yeah, sure.
She has
no
not
bad
taken a bad
losses.
loss this year, is what I'm trying to say. So, like, to your point that she hasn't been consistent, she kind of has been consistent. And yet,
No,
you're right. There have been
consistent
allergies
when she's played. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's playing. So, like, she has to
so
be
far
in tier one.
she's entered. I don't know that she'll make it through the tournament. That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
No, that is what I was going to end up on as well. I think that's fair. Where it's like if it's just a degree of 7 straight quarterfinal Arena Sabalenka at the majors. I don't know if you know this about Iga Swiatek, but just very casually, very, very casually, 19 straight wins coming into this Wimbledon. Just again, I was looking up the all-time 3 to 5 year primes, and to even have a seat at the table in that conversation, you literally have to win at least 35 consecutive matches, because it's like, otherwise, sorry, you haven't done anything cool yet.
Yeah.
And by the way, you have to win 20 consecutive matches like a couple times during that stretch. Iga just doing that casually right now. I agree. I do think there's a difference between the consistency of Sabalenka and Swiatek and the consistency of Rybakina, even if Rybakina is the one of the three with a Wimbledon title. Still, her weapons, her break percentage is at a career high. She seems to be moving better than ever when she is playing. The line drive tennis she can play. I get why she would be a Wimbledon champ. She belongs in tier one. I don't need applause. It wouldn't be surprising if she wins Wimbledon. It's just, will she be healthy for 2 weeks?
If you told me there's a semifinal or final, Rybakina versus either Sabalenka or Rybakina versus Swiatek, those two specifically, I'd be inclined to lean Rybakina right now in both those picks. But it's the getting there that makes me have her lower.
Fair enough. Well, then last but not least, to end the show, why'd you go Sabalenka over Swiatek at 1?
Two major considerations there. The surface, obviously, it's been a better surface for Sabalenka, to say the least, and not the best for Swiatek. And then major consistency. That's one of the underrated stories with Iga. And she has not been great at the slams outside of French Open for the last couple of years. I mean, she really hasn't. I have a counter
for you, but carry on.
But she hasn't been. I mean, that's just the thing. So I don't know what that is. I'm not sure there's a real clear reason. But I look at the data, I look at her, Wikipedia page, and I see a lot of blue, in the last couple of years on the timeline. A lot of.
Can I just say though, because I have it
losses.
in front of me, last 10 major she's played since the start of 2022, 4 titles.
Start later than that. Start 2023.
But 2022 is her breakout year.
Since we're not talking about that. We're talking about I'm talking about 2023 on.
Okay, well, that's a stupid time frame to
I'm
start with,
moving the
because
window. I'm
she
moving the
became
window.
world number one in that 2022 season. She's been
Hmm.
Iga since then, so that's the window I choose to use. 47-6 overall at the
Before that,
majors
she was
over her
what,
last
Janet? I
10.
mean, who was she before she
Well, I'm
was
just
Iga?
saying, like, to your point, her 2023 major results, she wins Roland Garros, obviously, quarterfinals Wimbledon, round of 16 loss Australia, round of 16 loss US Open.
In 2024, Australian Open loses third round.
Did
I'm just
not see
saying,
that.
for someone who we're talking about, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but this Iga era, Iga dominant, Iga this, Iga
No,
that,
it's
Iga all
not seven
timer.
straight. It's not seven
Yeah.
straight like Sabalenka.
Sabalenka had made 6 straight semis even before she
Yeah.
lost in a quarterfinal. I mean, she's been really robustly getting there. And it's not what you'd think based on their games, based on how Sabalenka seems to be blowing like hot and cold on court, certainly, and seems
Not since
erratic.
the Kanepi
But
match.
but actually, that's a good pull. But actually not really in terms of her getting there time and time and time again.
Yep.
Sometimes underperforming in those late rounds, but a lot of those late rounds have had Swiatek out of the tournament already. So I think, especially on grass, undercooked, no prep tournaments for Iga this year. I'm not especially high on her standards. Why I have her even as high as number two, because this ain't nothing. Number two ain't
Yeah.
nothing, to be clear. Why I have her number two is I think she's just playing that well that it can transcend surface. I mean, there are sometimes, and even occasion, there are sometimes in a career. Now that I'm talking myself into it, I want to put her lower. I almost want to put Rockin ahead of Shanta now that I start talking about this. The other reason I would sell on Swiatek as the number one, which is where you have her, if you want to put your
Well, she's
graphic
also
up.
gonna well, it's gonna be fascinating to see
Do
if
you want
it's
to defend
one.
her at number one?
Yeah,
But
I'll make the. I was gonna say I will make the case for her at one.
okay, but um, I also wonder if a lot of her mind is knowing that she's a few weeks away from a once in a lifetime chance to win Olympic gold on clay, and that's not going to come again. That's so soon. Why go all out and risk some sort of injury that jeopardizes that once in a lifetime chance to win a gold medal, Olympic gold medal? Her dad was in the Olympics on as a rower. Why risk that chance to do that for a little slidey grass stained tennis in Britain when you could go back to your
Sound
continent and have a great time on clay?
Sounds like Iga Swiatek, her journey to finding her power and her voice research has already begun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate that argument. And again, game style wise, I did fight myself because game style wise, Sabalenka, the argument is clear. And she's a two-time semifinalist at Wimbledon around. Iga has never reached, again, 7 straight quarterfinals, 6 of the last 7 semifinal results. She's also quietly still 30-9 overall in a year that has felt almost a little underwhelming since that Australian Open title obviously has righted the ship with her runs in Rome, Madrid, and disappointing exit in the quarterfinals of the French Open, still a quarterfinalist there as well. The one thing missing from the Iga 3 to 5 year prime is the run where she makes 12 straight quarterfinals or further at the majors. Now, she just turned 23, so it feels like that run is very much on the horizon. Yeah, again, Sabalenka,
She hasn't come close to that run. I mean, she hasn't hit
it's true.
five.
No, again, that's the missing piece. But she
Yeah,
has
yeah.
won 3 straight Roland Garros, which is like, all right, well, if you're not going to do that, be really good at one major.
Look,
And she's like, okay, I'll win 4 of 5. No, I know you're not arguing
no,
against.
no,
I'm
no, no,
just
no, no, no. I'm going to say something in your favor and to defend Swiatek. She's won 5 slams. Her obviously the corollary people talk about with her at French Open is Nadal,
yeah,
and Nadal once
and
he won
Everett.
his he won 4 French Opens before he won anything else at
Yeah.
all. And so now Iga has her 4. Then his next one was Wimbledon right afterwards. So Iga has now won her 4th French Open. Maybe a Wimbledon follows. I mean, who
Well,
knows? That's sad.
here's where the Iga argument starts. 16-7 for her career on grass courts. You look for Sabalenka, she's 34-19. She's 14-5 at Wimbledon alone, compared to Iga 16-7 overall. Though I believe Iga's a former junior Wimbledon singles champion, which I
She
always like to
is.
throw that
She
nugget
is.
in.
Although she
Um,
does when you talk to her about that, she really kind of negs herself about that and says that I
that she was
that
going to be a once in a generation player, and she happened to be 16 while all these other
no,
people were. And
she said the courts were like super hard and they
uh,
like was not playing like grass basically. It was all like
yeah.
really baked and
Well,
dry
here's
year.
the thing. She has progressively gotten better. 2022, she makes third round Wimbledon. That was after round of 16, 2021, third round 2022. Last year, semifinals Bad Hamburg, quarterfinals Wimbledon. Her excellence should transcend surface. Like how much better she's gotten at the +1. Now, her forehand contact point being as off as it will be on this surface is an issue. But her backhand's still going to be her backhand. She's gotten better as a spot server. She's gotten more comfortable as a volleyer. She's just gotten better at being
I think
aggressive.
I think it'll
Like
come
I
down to her.
agree.
I think it'll come down to her serving. I think basically her Wimbledon this year could come down to her serving. And granted, her Wimbledon last year was not that bad. I think she had a really good fourth round win against Bencic last year. That was a match that a lot of people circled
Beating
as being one that
Martic,
she
who's
could come
always
out.
tricky on this
Yeah,
surface.
yeah. I think her Wimbledon, and then she lost to Svitolina, who was kind of having a fairy tale moment. So I think that I think her year was fine last year, and so if that's where she goes in, but yeah, the combination of the surface, the not doing great at slams, and the Olympics on the horizon are three reasons I don't have Swiatek as my number one.
I think just the excellent transcend surface. I think this is the Iga run begins. I think 19 matches in a row might get up. This might be the moment where like that win streak starts, where that slam consecutive quarterfinal streak starts. Certainly has felt that way for a 38-3 player, someone who's won 90% of her matches over the last 52 weeks, 78 overall. Jeff Sackman asked me if I could name all 8 losses on Monday. I could, so I'm not going to do that again for you now today. I'm just a believer in the consistency of Iga and the continued development of Iga Swiatek. You know she wants a Wimbledon trophy on her mantle before things are said and done, and I just think she's the best player in the world. And I've said this. I said this going into the French Open, and this will be my position moving forward. I'm predicting Sabalenka Swiatek finals for every major through the end of the 2025 French Open. Like I think 2026, excuse me, French Open. Like I think we're in that window where we kind
We
of
have
know who the two best players in the world are.
eight slam finals to the two of them in a row.
No. Those will be my predictions. I'm gonna be wrong. Like, but I'd rather just
Okay.
be wrong predicting them because I
Well,
think they are pretty clearly the two best players in the world. And like you're gonna get wrong if
I
you try to
appreciate
get
that.
clever with
I
your
appreciate that.
predictions.
I appreciate that commitment to hard-headedness. So no
No,
matter what
I
happens, I'm going to
just
keep
like
picking the same thing.
well, I
Yeah.
just think it's gonna happen. Like they're the two best players in the world. We've been knocking on
we're overdue for a slam final between them. We
exactly,
really
and
are. We
like
really are. Yeah.
that's what the bet is. It's just like at some
I
point
think
they're the
it's
two
more
best.
likely. I think it's more likely in New York or Australia to happen.
I agree.
I don't know
Or
that.
Paris. Sabalenka
Well,
could do it in Paris
there's just
too.
a lot of players who are in this draw who you could see coming into Iga's draw on this surface and being like, ooh, I don't know, that could be tricky for her. And it could be honestly a lot of people. It could be, we mentioned Kenin, like someone like that level, like or a I don't know who there, lots of
Vondrousova. Chip shots her way and drop
no,
shots her way in the Alizé Cornet fashion.
that one I don't see. But there are many who I do see, like Gula Niemeyer, we mentioned earlier,
Madison Keys blitzing her way
Raducanu,
through.
Keys, Bolter. There's a lot of players.
Bolter, I don't
Osaka
see, but
again.
carry on.
There's a lot of you don't see. Wow, now you're the one who's nagging
No,
Bolter.
it's about the first serve. I don't see it for Bolter or Raducanu in the Iga matchup. I'd see you just have to have something to make her uncomfortable from the start. And there are some, again, the Chinwen serve, the Osaka serve, the Keys serve, the Sabalenka and Rybakina serves. There are some names.
All of them can crush returns too, and Ego could leave some real,
No, that's what I'm saying.
serves
You
up
have to
there.
have the
Yeah.
weapons, and
Okay.
that's what it'll take. And certainly
Alexandrova,
I
Samsonova.
agree. They're
Yeah.
most vulnerable. She's most vulnerable on this surface
Yeah.
for now. But that's the key word for now.
But still number one for you. So I appreciate
Still number
the
one for me.
commitment
It's
to
again
her
the
brand.
excellence transcends the surface. That said, Ben Rothenberg, to recap what our top 10 lists look like, and I'm going to recap here back and forth. You have at number 10 Naomi Osaka. I have Victoria Azarenka. At number 9, you went Raducanu. I went Bolter, but you had shout outs to Andreescu Osaka there. Number 8,
And
I
Jabeur.
had
Jabeur was my 10 actually. But that's okay.
I think I said 10. That was your 10 for. Anyways, Danielle Collins, my number 8. Your number 8 was ultimately the Troika of Russians, the trio.
Troika's a good word for that. Yeah.
The discards, Samsonova, Alexandrova, and Kalinskaya. Again, that was the end of your tier number 3. That's my tier 3. Tier 2, I went Pegula, Jabeur, Keys. You went Pegula, Keys, Collins. Tier 1, both had Goff 4, both Rybakina 3. You go Swiatek 2, Sabalenka 1. I go Sabalenka 2, Swiatek 1. That's your look, folks, at the top contenders heading into this 2024 Wimbledon women's singles competition. Ben Rothenberg, 90 minutes. Back to our old school roots. I appreciate having you on the show, my friend. Any other additional thoughts we need to hit?
One little random thought because I'm looking at this draw. Did we sell too short the recent French Open semi-finalist and Jasmine Paolini? We did not mention her.
She was on my honorable mention of veterans.
One of your like 40 honorable mentions.
Yeah, okay, and my exact reasoning was I haven't seen her play much grass court this year. Yeah. She played one match, retirement today. Out of respect for who she's been this season, I agree with you. She's a name that has to be said out loud when talking about, hey, who's going to have success at the year's third major. it's her serve on this surface. Like it's just going to get feasted upon.
Yeah.
And so that's a concern for me.
Zhang is the other. I know she was somewhere in your honorables in your young
In my
players to pop
young to
out,
pop. Yeah,
even though she'd already made a slam final this year. So I feel like she's already pre-popped.
I agree.
But if
Fair.
she was popcorn, she would come already popped in the tin, not in the microwavable pouch, already popped. But yeah, I think that she's also someone who can make a quarter at this tournament, something like that, with the right draw.
It's kind
We'll
of
see.
skinny pop though. You're like, look, her season's been good, but I need some butter. Anyways, I agree. That's everything. And that's your look, a comprehensive preview of what the top contenders in the women's singles draw might look like at Wimbledon. Now, you mentioned this earlier, but before I let you go, quick plug. No challenges remaining, hopefully daily, every day through Wimbledon.
A lot. I don't know about daily, but give me a lot of them. A lot of shows for sure during Wimbledon. I like doing shows during slams. Yeah, I think it we'd love to do it. I would,
I love
especially
it.
being home, having a little time advantage. It could work.
I
We'll
like
see.
it. Any second serve pieces from you during Wimbledon?
Hopefully, yeah. We're trying to figure out the second serve still new. It's the first, hasn't done too many like slam coverage. I'm trying to encourage them to ramp up the slam output. But yeah, I've done like 2 or 3 things for them so far, and it's been great to see. They've got people should subscribe to the newsletter there to get updates on the new posts and building something hopefully pretty cool there.
Yeah, love to hear it. Well, it is always good to have you on the show, my friend. Thank you for joining us live here on YouTube. A thank you to everyone in the chat. There were a lot of different comments. I lost track of them, so I apologize. I lost contain. I'll get better at following up on those questions as we move forward. But thank you to all of you who did engage, whether it be on Twitter, on YouTube, whatever the different platform may be. Appreciate you all joining us tonight. Appreciate the efforts of our super producer, Daniel Westoff, as well, who always does an incredible job with all of his editing, all of his graphics. That said, I'm going to hope you've been on this show enough to still remember the ending. So signing off here on tonight's show for our fantastic guest, Ben Rothenberg, here on the mini break. That's your hint to you. For our super producer, Daniel Westoff, our friends at Tennis Point, and all of us here at both Cracked Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. Ben, come on. I have full faith. What do we tell our listeners here?
Great shot.
That you know what? I've had you on all the pod. I
Wow.
knew Great Shot podcast.
Okay, well,
I'll
which
give
one is you're like this
this.
schizophrenic
Well,
branding where there's like
yeah,
10 different things you are at once. So which one is this?
It's the mini break. It's on your screen. You see it here. I'll give you a hint.
I'm supposed to say something that's on the screen?
Yeah, no, it's not. That's the ending. It's that's the
Show?
break.
That's the break. Okay, no, I wasn't gonna get there.
Well, that's the break. And we
My
will
Wheel
see.
of Fortune was just next person.
I like it. Well, we'll clean that up next time. We'll clean that up in post. But thank you as always for joining us, Ben. I appreciate it.
I didn't crack under the live pressure until right then, so it's pretty good. Thanks, Alex.